Good morning, everybody. It is 5 minutes till Bible study time. Today we are going to do a Bible study on the shrewd manager, which is a pretty amazing teaching from Luke chapter 16. So we will see you in 5 minutes. All right. Well, I just look for countdowns, and I'll say that that song probably is not going to replace Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing in my life. I don't think it's probably going to replace Amazing Grace. It's interesting that when I was listening to that song, I'm pretty sure I could have, oh, look at this. This is what YouTube does. A man holding his kid. That's awesome. But what that song is interesting is because you could basically replace the name Jesus with, any other girl or guy's name, and it would seem to be holding the same meaning. Not that there's anything wrong with songs like that. Songs like that, to me, music's amoral. So there's a lot of secular songs that have absolutely profound meaning, like the song Lean on Me, songs like that. And I think that a lot of secular music has songs about human love and beauty that are missing oftentimes in what you'd call sacred music. But that was kind of, this is real love. It's true. Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you guys with me this morning. And, we're praying that everything is going well in your home. It is a different time. I suppose every time I introduce one of these Bible studies, I'm going to say it's a different time because it is a different time. So for Bible study today, I thought that the last few Bible studies that we've done, they're fairly easy to understand and fairly straightforward. So I thought I was going to go after the one parable that Christ tells that honestly is difficult. And it's the parable of the shrewd manager. So what I would like you to do after this is over, it would be interesting for you to look at other people's interpretation of this parable. I told my friend Phil that I was doing this parable this week, and he was taken aback a little bit because it's really an interesting parable, and but I think there's some meaning to it, and I just want to let you know straight up that this is how I feel that this parable is interpreted, but I am open to other people's ideas on it as well, because it's really kind of a mucky parable. It's not straightforward. There are no good guys in this parable. So first off, we have to get the understanding of what the word shrewd means. Shrewd, it's an adjective. It means acting with a specific goal, or an adjective, again adjective, marked by practical, hard-headed intelligence. So I guess in the vernacular, normal thing would say a person who's shrewd would be full of common sense. A person who is shrewd doesn't see the problem coming head on at them, but instead a shrewd person sees the ways around the problem, like takes the oblique angle towards thing. And so here's artwork that is fairly famous for the parable of the shrewd manager. And what we have here is we have the manager, we have the books, what is owed, and this is one of the person who has borrowed from the rich person. And so in Luke chapter 16, it says this: Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man. Let's see if we got all that in there. There we go. There was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their house. So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? 900 gallons of oil, he replied. The master told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 450. Then he asked the second, how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in their dealings with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Right? I mean, right? Well, so this is what we have to start with. We have to start with Jesus told his disciples. So some people have said that Jesus is talking specifically to the Pharisees, but Luke says no, he's telling this to his disciples. So it almost seems like this is a private teaching. And in this private teaching, there's a rich man. Now, in Christ's parables, and even honestly, when you look at the New Testament itself, when the Bible describes a person as rich, almost inevitably what they are actually saying is greedy. Okay? They're not just saying that the person is wealthy, but they're saying that the person is greedy. So we have the rich man who dies in the parable of Lazarus. We're going to get to that one. That's pretty exciting parable too. So you have the rich man dies in the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. But really the word there is the greedy man. In Jericho, Jesus meets a young man described only as a rich young ruler. And so again, it's not so much the problem is that he's rich. That's not a problem. It's the greedy young ruler. And so we have a person in this story who's greedy. He has a manager, and he calls in his manager, and he says to him, "What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer." You know, one of the most incredible self-made people in the United States is Oprah Winfrey. When I say that she is an incredible person, she literally went from poverty to being one of our culture's biggest influencers, for positive, for negative, however you want to call it. But she has been a massively influential person. She seems to have a massive amount of integrity. And from what I understand, she, from the beginning, made sure that there was no way she could have a manager or any kind of accountant steal from her. She made sure that she was in control of her own money. So she's not only famous now, self-made, but extremely wise. Well, this rich person has a manager who doesn't say that his manager is stealing from him, but the manager is squandering his money. And so he says to him, "You cannot be my manager any longer." And he says, "So now go straighten out my books, give an account of everything, and you're fired after that." It's interesting. When people who are very high up, like at banks and such, when they're being replaced, they're never given any warning at all. Instead, let's say you're the president of, I don't know, Citizens Bank, and they have your replacement in line. What they will do is they'll walk into your office and they'll say, "Hey, John Espinola, guess what? This is your replacement. Thank you for your service at Citizens Bank. You have a half an hour to clear out your desk while these 4 people watch you do it. We'll take your keys and we're going to walk you out of the building." Why? Because when you are in charge of that much money, you can cause damage to the company. Well, this greedy ruler, he doesn't get rid of the manager right away. He says, "Make all the accounts clear, and then you're fired." Now, so here's where I want to interpret this parable so that you have some background. The first thing is the rich ruler, the greedy ruler, is breaking the law of Moses with these loans that he has. You see, according to the law of Moses, it's illegal to charge a fellow Israelite interest on a loan. And so this is what the Old Testament says. It says, "If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and are unable to support themselves among you, help them as you would a foreigner and stranger, so that they can continue to live among you. Do not take interest or any profit from them, but fear your God, so that they may continue to live among you. You must not lend them money at interest or sell them food at profit." So here's the heart of God towards the fellow Israelite and the stranger and the foreigner. When they're suffering is not the time to make a lot of money off of them. Instead, our goal should be to keep the foreigner, the stranger, and the fellow Israelite in the land. It says we want to fear God so that they can stay. So when COVID-19 comes out and somebody has a bottle of Purell and they say, hey, I can get $100 for this, well, they're actually breaking the spirit of God's law, aren't they? And so that's what God has told the Israelites. He says, if you have somebody and you're going to loan them money, especially a fellow Israelite, do not charge them any interest. You're doing this to God. I mean, honestly, would anybody here loan God anything and then expect God to give them more? And that's what God is saying. He's saying, look at your fellow Israelites. If they're in need, if they're farmers and they had a bad crop the year before and they need to borrow enough money for 450 gallons of oil, then only charge them 450 gallons of oil. And so whatever profit they make, it's going to be a blessing to them and they won't have to come to you next year. Another scripture is this in Deuteronomy: do not charge fellow Israelite interest, whether on money or food or anything else that may earn interest. You may charge a foreigner interest, but not a fellow Israelite, so that the Lord your God may bless you in everything you put your hand to in the land you are entering to possess. So God is saying, look, treat every Israelite as if they're family. You wouldn't charge a family member interest. So don't charge a fellow Israelite interest either. Now, the rich man, the greedy man, is not doing this. You see, the greedy man, he loans to his fellow Israelites, but he's doing it at exorbitant interest rate. Look at what is going to happen. A bill of $900, the manager is soon going to say, well, you technically only borrowed $450. This is 100% interest rate on oil. On the wheat, it's going to be, I think it's a 25% interest rate that the greedy man is charging. So here's the problem. The manager is staring at his boss. The boss says, put your accounts into order. And the manager says, well, I'm not strong enough to farm. He's probably older at this point. And nobody's going to hire him again as a manager because the first guy is firing him for being, squanderous with the money. And he's too proud to beg. So he puts all of his efforts, all of his heart, all of his will, because he knows he only has a hold of the greedy man's money. He only has a hold of it for a very short time. And that time is running out on him. So his activity level goes to 11. He goes straight past 10. He goes right to 11. And he starts pulling everybody in because his only solution to this is to earn gratitude from those who owe his master interest. So he calls them in. And he says to them, he goes, how much do you owe? And the first one says, I owe 900 gallons of oil to the rich man. The manager says, no. Okay, take your bill. Scratch out the 900, put in you owe 450. I have the authority to do this. And then he takes the seal, the rich man's seal, and he seals it. And it's done. And the man who at one point owed 900 now only owes 450 gallons. This goes on all day. All day, the shrewd manager is working his way into people's hearts by reducing their bill to what the law says it should be. He's not costing the rich man any money at all, but he is bringing everything into the law. You see, what the rich man is doing is he can't charge interest to anybody, but he can hire someone to do it for him. And that way, he can go to synagogue and say, hey, I follow the law with all of my heart. Yes, I have this manager, and he does what he does. He manages my money. It's not me doing it. But he's really, his heart is doing it. And so the manager is bringing the greedy man into conformity with the law. Not that he seems to care about the law, not that he seems to fear God. What he fears is the fact that he only has charge of this money for so long, and he desires to be invited into people's homes so he will not have to work ever again for the rest of his life. So when this happens, one by one, people who are owed so much in interest are being relieved of the interest. And then it says that now this man has the eternal glory of many, right? Eternally glad that you did this. So the rich man's books are now rectified by the law. Rich man can't say anything about this. The rich man can't say anything negative about this because all of his books have now been rectified according to the law. He would receive everything that the law said he deserved to receive. But he also would receive everyone's applause. Because now imagine this. The guy who owed 900 has just been told that the rich man has let him off of all the interest. And so now the wealthy man is receiving applause from all of these people who have been forgiven the interest, forgiven the debt. So the rich man, the greedy man, has gained both in people's opinion and, oh, I'm running out of battery. I hope I finish this before this runs out. I don't have my cord on me. So the rich man has received all of these things. He can't say anything now negative about the manager. Instead, he just gives him a compliment and says he's shrewd. And then this is what Jesus goes on. He says, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves so that when it is gone, this is an inevitable statement, not if it is gone or if it runs out, but when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. You see, the point that I think Jesus is making is the money is going to run out. And too often, you and I scramble too hard to keep what we cannot keep forever. We scramble really, really hard to gain money, to gain wealth, to gain influence. We all love eating out at a good restaurant. We all love eating fine food, right? And too often we spend all of our time scrambling for these things. But Jesus says that the world is shrewder than us to try to gain these things that don't last. The money runs out. See, the manager knew he only had a matter of hours that he had this money. And he had to leverage this money as much as possible to get people to let him into their homes. What I think Jesus is saying is you and I need to recognize that the wealth that we have, there's a time limit on it also. That time limit is our death. That money will be handed to someone else. And for some it will be a blessing and some it will be a cursing. But that money will be handed to someone else. You and I have been given wealth. We've been given time. We've been given physical bodies. We've been given the ability to communicate with one another. And Jesus is saying that the people in the world are shrewder at winning other people's approvals for themselves, which is temporary, than those in the light are to try to gain other people into the light. See, the question is what are we scrambling for? What is it that we're using the wealth that we only have for a limited time to accomplish? Is it so we can eat well in the houses of others? Is that what it is? Are we chasing after something? Or are we using what God has given us so that more people will be in the kingdom of heaven? Are we using what we have been given so that more people will find Christ? And that's a question that the only one that can answer that for Mike is Mike, if he's honest with God. And the only one who can answer that for you is you. I remember hearing a story from a missionary. He said that if he had a truck that was full of 85-inch plasma screen TVs, and he told you that if you had $50, he could sell you one of those 80-inch plasma screen TVs. He said that if you did not have the money in your pocket, you would call somebody and you would say, the best bargain that could ever happen has just happened, and I need $50 and I need you to come to the church right now because there's a truck in the parking lot, and if you give me $50, I can get an 80-inch plasma screen TV, and bring $50 yourself because you can get a plasma screen TV. And you cannot tell me that people would not scramble to get that $50 if it weren't on them right then, because it's such a bargain. And then he stopped and he says, well, let me tell you what, for $50, I purchase children out of prostitution and I teach them how to sew. I teach them how to do crafts in India that they can take care of themselves and feed themselves. And he said, now, how many of you are willing to call your friends and say the best bargain ever just happened? I was told that for $50 I could buy a human life out of human trafficking. See, this is what Christ is saying. He's saying, what are we scrambling to do? You know, Christ said this. He said, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. That's what I think this parable is about. Because there's no good guys in the parable. The rich guy is doing what many people who follow Christ do. They say, what is the exact letter edge of the law that I can follow, still stay right with God, and yet get what I want? That's the rich guy. The manager, he's dishonest, just clear and blue. He uses his master's name in a way that his master doesn't even know about to secure for himself profit. There's no good people, but what they're doing is the example. The rich young, the manager is trying to store up treasures on earth. He'll get his meals. He'll get invited into homes. He'll spend the rest of his life not having to dig ditches. But he will die. And all of that wealth, it will go away. Randy Alcorn says this, abundance isn't God's provision for me to live in luxury. It's his provision for me to help others live. God entrusts me with his money not to build my kingdom on earth, but to build his kingdom in heaven. So I think this parable is asking us this question. What are we scrambling to do with the wealth that we have been given? Because when it fails, when it goes away, are we going to know that we used that wealth, that we were shrewd with it, we were wise with it, that we leveraged it as much as possible so that other people would be invited into eternal dwellings? I think that's what Christ is asking. And it's a good question to ask me every day. And I'm not just saying that to say it. But we all get drawn in, and we all scramble at times for things that they're just not going to last. But we are the manager. What we've been given is not ours, is it? And we serve a master. Remember, we did the parable of the talents. He's equipped us. But what he's equipped us with, it is not ours. And so we need to be shrewd in this world also. Amen? So that is my thoughts on the parable of the shrewd manager. No good guys in the parable. And yet, I think it has something to teach us. Now, this is the thing I would suggest. I know other people have different opinions on what this is about. I know that. But that's why I found it so much fun to study about it and to read about it and to come to thoughts. And I'm not going to argue with anybody else who has another opinion on it because I think that this is one of those parables that is exciting because we don't necessarily have all of the context to understand perfectly what it means. And I think it's pretty cool that there are things in the scriptures like this that we can think on, definitely have different opinions on, and enjoy each other's thoughts. So I love you. I really do. I miss you. We're going to be doing church on Sunday in the parking lot again. And really pleased for you guys that are coming out or those who are watching online because, you know, this will be over soon. And I don't know what soon means, but soon. And we'll be able to get together after that. So if this spurred any questions in your mind, please PM me. I would love to answer any questions that you have. And if there's any questions that you have that spur really good thoughts, if you don't mind, I'll post them in the public comments. And that way other people can be a part of these thoughts too. All right, God bless you. And until next time, remember, two's company, but as far as this Bible study is concerned, 3 is an audience. All right, talk to you later. God bless.